Hello, this will be a compilation of a three-part series I made roughly about 2 years ago, looking at what's called the long or the Persian foot. So one long or Persian foot is 1.056 imperial English feet. And how various people have been, like for instance the study of Stonehenge and the measures in there. There's also the megalithic yard, and that's an interesting question because it's in essence throughout all the work I do and looking, it's how multiple sets of measurements come together and have and then harmonize at very specific points, sun, earth and moon especially. But the use of this at Stonehenge, for instance, the long or the Persian foot, and it's Mike Pearson, but now for instance the lintels are 10 long feet in or 10.056 English feet, and how the diameters of not just the stone circle but the henges themselves have nice connections. But there's again the same theme that other units, for instance the doric, ionic and samian, covered in depth as well, how again they lead to musical proportions between themselves but also embedded in ancient architecture, and how these multiple sets of measures come together at, either at like a integer as a whole number, but what's more important than that, at very harmonic numbers, like numbers that by that same unit will define sun, earth and moon, and even the basics of the imperial units that we have now. And curious, there'll be connections to the meter, but it's not just one or the other. It's very much along the lines of Livio Stacchini mentioning that they're proportioned at a very specific way, and they just so happen wonderfully work together to always bring these multiple sets of units coming to very specific points embedded in all the sacred ancient architecture, but even up till modern times. Now, for instance, probably best preserved in the I mentioned the Freemason temple here, the house of a temple in Washington, but also the cathedrals, Buddhist, Hindu and other ancient temples. And now, as I don't know if I mentioned it in the video, but you also might note that 137.5, that's the 137.5 degrees is the golden angle for phyllotaxis, which creates those spirals in pineapples. The golden angle. So it's the way that these things convert, and that they convert at lovely precise points, which 432, 108 for instance, like 528, 5,280 feet per mile, and well, these types of things as well. So that's going to be the focus of the video. Recent compilations as well I put together, which would link to this. For instance, when I look at the use of 33 in ancient symbolism, architecture and science, and metrology as in measurement, and the same thing happens with like the Pythagorean harmonics, music, weights, measures, including temperature, but geometry, astronomy and more. And also in the recent compilation redo I did on regards to the pentagram, and how the angles of the pentagram give us these numbers, again all various systems of measurement including time, weight and measurement of length. Temperature comes in there too, but how they connect sun, earth and moon, natural cycles, but also you could say they're man-made. But the way that numbers such as 144, 216 are like beautiful, all numbers are special, but there are these type of numbers have whether it's in math or geometry, have very special significance. So for instance in here with all those, that's where the long foot comes up, and then we also have the ionic foot, and that will be a feet because it's multiple sets of measures. But the ionic foot, as in the ionic column or the column of wisdom, seems to be one of the most important to join, including modern imperial, which in fact is not modern at all, with these other ancient units, and how they will link to other features such as timekeeping via a 1 second pendulum. and again, recent compilation that I posted in regards to 55, 66 and how even 792, but the maths of these numbers, the geometry of these numbers, again, bringing us to ancient architecture, but perfect conversion points in regards to sun, earth, and moon dimensions and speeds and weights as well, and temperature, and how all these various weights and measure systems that I believe we've lost something that's happening underneath the surface, that they used these in a very cunning way, genius way, and then by using those and then comparing to proportions of architecture, which you can then find the inherent measurement of these ancient temples, you'll find beautiful mathematics, whether it's Fibonacci numbers, triangular numbers, all these other really special sets. So that'll be the focus of the video. It's very much about the way that various supposedly unconnected ancient systems of metrology, of measurement, come together at very specific numbers to describe things such as sun, earth and moon diameters, but also how they will link to ancient legends such as the flood in the Ark of Utnapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and for instance how ionic system of measurement seems to be a key, but will link to the canonical cubit, but also, as we're going to look at now, the importance of the long foot, or referred to as the Persian foot, and how even the conversion rate between imperial and the long foot, and also the ionic and all these other systems, they themselves are at these very lovely numbers and bring multiple connections in actual living architecture, in the architecture of legends such as New Jerusalem, Ark of Utnapishtim, but most importantly in sun, earth and moon relationship. So the long foot, links to these earlier videos will be in the description, because it's about a system of how these things all come together and convert at very beautiful, very precise points. What's also very important is how these multiple units of measurement as applied to architecture, also you'll find it in mythology is an important the use in religion as well, is how the architecture of the sun, earth and moon measurements also come together in timekeeping, and especially the 1 second clock. I'm going to do an extended sort of version on these earlier videos where I was talking about pendulums and how the 1 second pendulum embodies so much information, and beyond that there are these apparently slight margins of error between different pendulums at different latitudes in themselves create a system which joins with one another. So you have multiple sets of ancient measure coming together at very harmonic numbers, bringing together ancient Egypt, ancient Indus, ancient Greek measures also embedded in their architecture, which will give you measurements regards sun, earth, moon, even the stars as well. And it's a harmonious system, and the more you build up these apparent coincidences, or but they just back each other up, and then you can go, aha, but that's 5.6 millimeters wrong. Well, actually that exact difference between those systems brings in itself a series of perfection and harmony and conversion points. And so this video will be on the long foot, because I have been mentioning it in recent videos and in those links below, where via the pentagram or the harmonic numbers, or for instance the use of 33 feet, which in itself has a direct connection to a very specific pendulum, which gives you all sorts of different connections, and linking again the pyramids and all these other features. So it's about how they all work together, and the more you put the pieces and line the pieces up, it's at some point you got to go, well, coincidence doesn't really cut it. There might not be a smoking gun document, but if we look at the architecture of the temples, they themselves are a textbook in stone. And then when you apply that to the other knowledge, whether it's in regards to astronomy, music, geometry and arithmetic, and it all comes so well together. So even if it is pure accident, pure coincidence, and there's no connections between these ancient cultures, and that the ancient people couldn't work out these things, even though our before computers and satellites, we were able to work them out. We didn't have sophisticated, highly advanced machinery to do these things. And yeah, it's at the very least, it's a system for learning things and memorizing things, and at the most, it's raises serious question marks about how much knowledge did our ancestors have. Not it's again you don't. It's all very simple technology, like a pendulum. You cannot get more simple than that. And the people who developed these things did it without computers, without calculators, without satellites, and they didn't even really need theodolites, those surveying little telescope type of things as well. You can also do that with very primitive means. But the Longfoot, how it connects to especially the ionic, but also to other features, they all come together and merge, and not just the temples or sun, earth, moon proportions, natural time such as full moons and sidereal months as well, but also timekeeping. And that raises a question: is the second arbitrary, or is the second almost embedded in our DNA? I can't answer that, but the question might well be raised. Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded. I'm going to put this up as a few separate videos because we're covering a lot in regards to this, but I want to have a look at ancient measures and some recent finds, especially in regards to stone circles and to Stonehenge. And well, Mercury or Hermes, the god of weights and measures; Thoth, god of weights and measures; Seshat, Nuwa Fu Hzi, also gods connected to geometry, astronomy and science, wisdom in general. And so ancient geometry, ancient knowledge embedded in ancient measures. This will be about, with a focus on what's called the Folkestone drums, which have this geometric patterns in there as well, but has a prototype bar or a way of standardizing measures, ancient measures. So this is the Folkestone drums. Hermeticism, weights and knowledge, an ancient system connected with the Quadrivium, but geometry, astronomy, arithmetic, and music as well. So the Folkestone drums, there we have them there, gods of geometry, astronomy, weights and measures: Thoth, Seshat, Hermes, Mercury, Nuwa Fu Hzi, and others. And how these drums, are they tools where we can find an ancient standard of weights and measures, which I must say, and I'll cover this in the next few episodes, blend wonderfully with harmonic numbers. All I've still haven't quite finished the series on 33, for instance, 33 feet, and the Longfoot. Wonderful connections going on in there. That's to come in the future. But so if you were to take 10, like a Longfoot is 1.056 feet. We'll look at that. I will show that better. But 1.056 feet is a Longfoot. So if you had 10 long feet, 10.56 feet, you could wrap that around this stone 10 times. That would wrap around 8 times, and that 7 times. Now that's interesting because what were the units? So 12 inches per foot. We don't know exactly what the subdivisions of other ancient units were. Even that I'll get into it, because it is the Longfoot or the megalithic yard, which have these wonderful connections to Doric, Ionic, Egyptian royal cubits, and the allegedly modern English foot. So whether they were in use or have we'll look at that, because there's some interesting connections. Now, firstly, I'll give a shout out to Dave Hanrahan. I'll put his YouTube link in there. I'll try to remember to put his G Plus channel, because he was the one who shared this recent. He knows that I'm into my measures, and I've mentioned the Longfoot before, so he's sent me this link. This was recently hit the news. He visited the Farnborough henges, so for instance you can find some videos there on him, linked to his YouTube and the G Plus channel, but G Plus won't be around for long. Anyway, just Folkestone, when you draw them like that, they look a bit like emojis, but that's something else. So are these Folkestone drums tools for standard measures, which we can find in ancient sites? And I first come across the Longfoot a few years ago in Encyclopedia Britannica. Now you can see that the Stonehenge article has been updated December 12th, 2000. 18, which was the same time that this article hit the newspapers, and it was written by Mike Parker Pearson. That's interesting as well, relevant. But what we have is this long foot, 1.056 feet, which is also referred to as a Persian foot as well. So if that's a 12-foot ruler, that would be one long foot. That's how. So they've just rounded it off slightly. If you follow through, but so it's exactly the same number. They've just rounded off. Now that's such a small. That's splitting a split hair. But the long Persian foot, and Mark Parker Pearson, who was the one who's recently published on this. So I'll put all these links will be in the description as well. British Journal for the History of Mathematics, the Folkestone and Levant devices, measuring devices from the time of Stonehenge. I'll put some more links in, again, these links and some more detailed stuff in the description. But going back, so this was updated 2012. You go back about 2007, points out, so Stonehenge phase 1, before the stone circle that most people identify it with. What we have is the measures there. So 360 long foot outside the ditch, 330 long feet, 300, 270. Also the station rectangle, which has a 12 to 5 proportions, that creates a 5, 12, 13 second Pythagorean triplet, Pythagorean theorem. But if we go back, and what's going on here now, this concept is one that's still with us today. So for instance, Greenwich Observatory has this plaque which shows the yard or 2 feet, so 3 feet or is a yard or 2, so a nice 2 to 3 reference there. Also have 1 foot, but the meter prototype bar is another one where all our measures are defined by this. We go back to this to refer to it. So the bronze yard, this is an example used in the US, where we have a in the vault, in the palace, in the university, where we have a tool from which we can calibrate our measures with. Are these Folkestone drums connected? Well, I believe so. I think there's a lot more to it than just that now. The Salamis stone, for instance, Mark Wilson Jones, just again mentioned this recently, the Doric foot, the Ionic foot, and the allegedly modern English or the common Greek foot, and you can even see the outline of a foot there, is embedded in this stone. So the Salamis stone has systems, a conversion tool or a calibration tool for weights and measures, or measures specifically. Allegedly modern English foot, it's actually quite old. Now, why is historic, Ionic and common or English foot important? Again, Mark Wilson Jones points out that the columns of the Parthenon, and when you measure a column, you should include the architrave, actually should include the column and the architrave, but what we have there is 45 Doric feet equals 48 English or common feet, or 50 Ionic. So we have 3 different systems coming together at a wonderful series. Now, 48 to 50 is a 24 to 45 ratio, and 50 to 45 is a 15 to 16 ratio. You could go on a long time about that, but the Parthenon. So what we have is a harmonized system, which is practical reasons. So different stonemasons from across the Greek world could come together. They could use their local measuring tool and be able to calibrate it. But I think there's a lot more going on, and I'll show you why I mean that now. Salamis stone has that going on in there. Also the perimeter of a Salamis stone, now it's damaged there, but if we use the umbilicus or the center axis of symmetry, which would connect to the Vitruvian Man by Da Vinci, and this actually fits perfectly on there, but as in Vitruvian Man, what we have is a 2 to 3 ratio, but the perimeter of a Salamis stone also incorporates the samian foot, or Samos, as in Pythagoras of Samos, which was another unit of measure. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 units coming together, incorporated in this tool, this Salamis stone. Now it just so happens that at 3.84 feet, the width is the square root of 5 Egyptian royal cubits within 1/3 of a millimeter. Extraordinary level of precision, even pretty much by modern standards, to get that level. And the square root of 5 is so wonderfully connected to the golden ratio, as well. So a 2 to 1 rectangle would give you a square root of 5. But so this is a tool. The Falkland drums is a calibration tool. Now if we go over to the red pyramid, we have this capstone. Now that's what it looks like now. It has been altered. I would call that an act of vandalism. Mr. ZH was in charge at the time, and this is what happened. But the pyramid, as it was, and it was pieced together, it would be 1 meter high and pi over 2 meters wide, creating a 7 to 11 ratio. Now pi over 2 meters is equal to 3 Egyptian royal cubits. But there's also the foot, the meter, and the cubit of Alan Green as touched, but that would also so 1 foot plus 1 cubit, Egyptian royal cubit, plus 1 meter is 6 foot within splitting hairs again. And the meter, the foot, and the cubit relationship in regards to a 1 meter pendulum, which creates a 1 second, 1 meter measurement of time, a measurement of length, which joins to the Egyptian royal cubit at 86,400 seconds per day. Thinking about the pyramid in 3 dimensions, and you get the size of the earth there if you include the socle and sockets, etc. But so this the pyramidion cap here, 3 Egyptian royal cubits, 1 meter high, 7 to 11 ratio. That is the Great Pyramid, which is 440. Now, I've done a video on no one side of the pyramid is exactly the same, but as a very good approximate, it's 440 by 280 Egyptian royal cubits high, which gives it a 7 to 11 ratio, just like the pyramid cap at the red pyramid. And the Egyptian royal cubit. Now we go over to, this is from a grave hoard found in Varna on the Black Sea coast in Bulgaria. Amazing metallurgy, some really interesting stuff going on here, and amongst the finds was this bowl and also this gold plate. Now the bowl itself, which is at least 6,000 years old, about 4,000 BC, predates the official age of the Old Kingdom by 1,000 years. At least it is 1 Egyptian royal cubit in diameter. But we also have this gold plate with these interesting little holes marked in there. And so 4 of these gold plates across, or 3 along. Now, so this in itself incorporates the Egyptian royal cubit, which is used to the Great Pyramids, for instance. So the height 3 to 4 ratio fits in there well. So there we see the gold plate. Now that's a so from corner to corner, 3, 4, 5 triangle, the first of the Pythagorean triplets, which also describes the Cathedral pyramid. 3, 4, 5 triangles, and that just happens to be a 3 to 2 ratio, which is the Vesica Pisces or Vesica Piscis. Rope stretches. So the Vesica would nicely fit in there, 2 of them next to each other. That way it creates a 3 to 12 triangle, and okay, we'll get to that. But so the Vesica there, which has the Egyptian royal cubit on that bowl, 3, 4, 5 triangle. If we superimpose the Salamis stone, it is at a 3 to 2 ratio, and that would fit on there nicely as well. So the Vesica 3, 4, 5, Cathedral pyramid, the Egyptian royal cubit, and well, the Great Pyramid is in here as well. But firstly, this 3 to 12 triangle, Pythagorean theorem. 3 squared plus 12 squared is 153. Therefore, the hypotenuse is the square root of 153, which is 12.36931, which is depending on the cycle, well, it's pretty much spot on. It is the number of full moons per year is a square root of 153. Now the Vesica in itself is a 265 to 1, well, square root of 3. Beautiful stuff's going on there. So now if you look at the gold plates, that it has the geometry of the Great Pyramid in there, pi and phi amongst other things is going on. Great Pyramid plan, Vesica Piscis, Pisces. Well, what do we have in the rhombus? 30, 60, 90 degree set square, which would also be incorporated in the gold plate here at the Varna find. So the Egyptian royal cubit, Great Pyramid proportions, Vesica. Vesica describes a 3, 4, 5 triangle of Cathedral pyramid. Systems of geometry, systems of measurement. embedded in architecture, just like the Salamis stone. The Anne Balkans and J. Capref have examined the Parthenon. Wonderful stuff going on in there. 2 to 3, 3 to 4 ratios, very musical. Is the Hermetic constant, 2 to 3, is embedded throughout the Parthenon. The Red Pyramid capstone have the 1 meter, 1 second pendulum, 3 Egyptian royal cubits at the base, 7 to 11 ratio, just like the Great Pyramid. And just so happens that the columns of the Parthenon, including the architrave, is a 14, so 3 to 11, 3 to 11, which is a 14 to 11, which is just, it's the 7 to 11 ratio. So if you draw a triangle, right angle triangle, that's a 14 to 11 triangle. Basically squaring the circle, essentially. Proportions of Earth, relative size of Earth and Moon, also embedded in there at 27.3%. Measure, and the truth shall set you free. So this is what's just an intro to the Folkestone drums and the Longfoot, and that we see these tools for standardizing measure are actually quite an ancient thing, lending a lot of credence to the geometry measurements of the Folkestone drums. More to come in the next part. Cheers, have a good one. Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded. This will be part 2. Part 1, I'll put the playlist in the description. Also other links will be in there. We've been looking at the Longfoot, and so the Folkestone drums recently published that do they encode the Longfoot in are these ancient tools? The geometry in them is interesting. I'd love to get some more info regarding to the weight between them as well, but this is a measure system, and the Longfoot are these like a tape measure, in that you would wrap a cord around them to get ancient measure. For instance, so a Longfoot, 1.056 feet, would wrap 10 times around the small one, 8 times around that one, and 7 times around that one, 1.056 feet. The geometry, weights and measures, Thoth, Seshat, Hermes, Nuwa Fu Hzi. Link to Dave Hanrahan, who sent me this recent article as well. And so are these tools for standard measure. Longfoot, or the Persian foot, goes back quite some time. A very interesting topic. Say in regard, so Stonehenge Phase 1, 270, 300, 330, or 360 long feet. And the prototype bar, so using something as this as a method of preserving weights and measures, or that to make any object, let's just say a sacred object, to have it at a sacred measurement. And this is not too much different from modern times with the meter prototype bar or the bronze yard bar, or for instance at Greenwich Observatory. And the Salamis stone, Doric, Ionic, allegedly modern English feet, being a harmony point at the Parthenon, as Mark Wilson-Jones. If you look up Anne Balkans or J. Capref, the Parthenon is there is not a right angle on the Parthenon. There is not a straight line, well, except for the drums of the Parthenon. No right angles. They're fitted together, individually fitted, watertight. Just fantastic stuff. So again, if you ever hear that it's square blocks, right angle blocks, no, there's not a right angle. There's not a curve. There's not a straight line in this thing. The columns are curved. To create that curve, you would have to draw a circle 1 mile in diameter. The regular blocks are not regular. They're individually fitted. No right angles. Watertight, airtight, fantastic stuff. But when you measure it, should measure it from there when you're measuring a column, and that would make it 48 common or English feet, 45 Doric, or 50 Ionic. Now, that's a 16 to 15 ratio, Doric to Ionic, or a 24 to 25 ratio between the English and the Ionic foot, which is a. But anyway, Salamis stone, which also incorporates the samian foot, if you look at the perimeter of the stone. And what happens is, if you think in fingers, it's a perfect harmony point between the common, the Doric, the Ionic, and the samian scale. And keep in mind fingers. It's also square root of 5 Egyptian raw cubits in width within 1/3 of a millimetre. This was all in part 1, so I'll just skip through this. It's all time, measurement, beautiful geometry, proportions, and it's really stretching it to dismiss this as a coincidence on its own, given the nature of if it was random. It's surely the most random perfection symphony of random coincidence ever. But now back to the Folkestone drums and the importance of the long foot or the Persian foot, 1.056 feet, and these ancient units of measure are actually intricately, beautifully connected. And so again, all these links in the description. Now, Stonehenge Phase 1, which has a 12 to 5, as in a 5, 12, 13 triangle, second of the Pythagorean triplets. When you're measuring earthworks, so this is always going to be a question. When you're measuring earthworks over time, it's not like a nice clean line where you can measure exactly where it finishes and exactly where it starts. It erodes over time, so this is always going to be questioned. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of earthworks. Now, the same thing applies to Stonehenge. So the question is, how big is Stonehenge? What's the diameter? What's the circumference? Well, this will be linked in the description. There is no definitive data set for Stonehenge measurements. There never can be. Various surveyors at different times, the condition of Stonehenge varied. You just won't get an accurate measure of Stonehenge. And for instance, when Matthew Flinders Petrie did a geometric survey of Stonehenge and took one of the measurements, well, this was the conditions of the stone. So if the stones are tilting outways, they're going to change the circumference. If it's tilting inways, you're going to lose it. Now, it's built on earth, soil. It's not on a stone foundation. So if over thousands of years, the earth is going to shift. Maybe it might contract, maybe it might expand, but it's over time, solid, such as soil, is actually liquid over time. Even if it moves 0.5 millimetre per year, or even 1/10 of a millimetre per year over 4,000 years, you can never really be sure, and that's always going to be a problem. And on top of that, there's been restorations at Stonehenge. That's the exact measures we're never really going to know. You can sort of build a bit of a case. Now, for instance, the restoration at Stonehenge, well known, it's not no secret. So how big is Stonehenge? Diameters range from 32 metres, give or take a fraction, which is 105 feet, up to 33 metres or 108 feet. And the question is, well, how do you measure it? Do you measure it from the base, or do you measure it from the top, halfway up? Well, the stones themselves are not perfectly shaped. Now, if I was to do the circumference or the diameter at the top, it's going to be a big difference between the bottom there. So that's another issue with measuring in monument as an entirety. So many issues, so we're always going to have a problem there. However, if we look at places like Grey Weathers and bring up, okay, we also have the Good Stone Circle as well, which is around about 132.3 metres, 106 feet. So around there, but Grey Weathers, 33 metres by 32 metres, which is 108 and 105 feet. The ratio 33 to 32 is interesting. But if only a couple of inches out on either side, this has a dramatic impact, and so you can't, with any sort of certainty, say this is exactly the measurement. That's just the nature of earthworks and stone circles. However, in places such as the King's Men and the Hurler stones and others, we see 108 feet. But we also, as in Goodhaver and Grey Weathers, or in the standing stones of Steness, we see 105 feet. And so as looking at them across the UK, we start to get an idea that there are standardized measures in there and pointing towards not just 108 modern English feet, but also 105, because 105 feet, or 105.6 of a foot, that's 3 inches and a bit on either side. But what we do have is that the individual pieces, such as the lintel stones, are 10 long feet, or very close to it, in that they're 10.5 feet wide, which would make that, so again, 105.6 feet, 105 here at Greyweathers, and which has a 33 to 32 ratio happening, which brings us back to 32-33 series. And that's an interesting connection to the Longfoot, because 33 times 32 is 1056, same set of numbers. The allegedly modern feet and miles connection, so 1056 by 2 is 528, 5,280 feet per mile. 32 rods, 528 feet. 1 rod is 16.5 feet, or 33 over 2. 32nd triangular number, 528, 33 pounds, 528 ounces, 32, 33, 528. Times by 2, 1056. But what I mean by that is, so the lintels, they have not shifted in any, so there is a good evidence of the Longfoot in the lintels, because they're 10.5 feet. 10.56 could be, again, 0.06 of a foot. It's going to be an issue. However, if we keep going, so let's assume that 10 lintels of 10.56 feet times 10 will give us a diameter of Stonehenge and the Longfoot. Now we need to consider the Salamis stone, which was in part 1. They have a Doric, Ionic and common foot, but also the perimeter of a Salamis stone incorporates the samian, or foot of Samos, Pythagoras of Samos, and in fingers harmonizes wonderfully. Very beautiful stuff going on there. And, well, keep in mind fingers, because here we have Doric, Ionic, Samian, long feet, Indus or Mohenjo-Daro feet, Babylonian royal, or the Saxon foot. So 105.6 feet, or 100 long feet, is 1,584 Doric fingers, 1,760 Ionic fingers, 1,485 Samian, 1,600 fingers on the long scale. Now I must say, the long foot, we don't know what the subdivisions are. Did they divide by 10? Did they divide by 12? Did they divide by 91? We don't know. However, on this inches, feet scale, well, in fingers, it's a conversion point. Happens to be 144 as well. However, the Royal Babylonian, we do know what their divisions were, and so it's 1,920 Royal Babylonian fingers, and the Saxon foot is 1,536 fingers. The Saxon foot, North European or Drusian foot, we do know the subdivisions there, and you'll notice that the Indus, Royal Babylonian and Saxon foot are all equal, 1.1 or 13.2 inches. Now, if the long scale was divided in this sort of common way of doing it, with 3, 4, and 12s, for instance, it's 2 over 3 essentially, 3 over 4, but we do have these connections, and with these units, Doric, Ionic, Samian, as in the Salamis stone, as in the fingers being the common point on the Parthenon, fingers being this unity point on Stonehenge. If it was 105.6, but consider the other stone circles are at between 105 and 106 feet. The lintels connect to that as well. So what we have is now 3, 4, 5, 6, 1152, 384. So 384 times 2 is 768, 288, all the harmonic, it's all there. Now 100 long feet is also equal to 330 Ionic hands, or 33 Doric yards. I could go through, in previous videos, I just go through the importance of these numbers, how they apply to geometry, arithmetic, astronomy, and music. It's all there. It is, and is it a coincidence? Or how do you, well, it's fair. Chicken or the egg, which one come first? However, given that the important geometry such as Pythagorean theorem, squaring the circle, which connects to especially astronomical proportions, that the archaeoastronomy of these sites, the alignments, everything that's going on, it is a storm, a perfect storm of beautiful coincidence connected to the Quadrivium, to the older schools, Pythagorean schools, Pythagoreans, Greeks, where did they learn from? From the Babylonians and the Egyptians. This has been impossible to prove, really, without a time machine, but the burden of evidence I would say would be on the skeptics, because you would have to now establish how these different, separate, apparently unconnected cultures fall into place in such a wonderful, beautiful way that corresponds to modern architecture, and harmony points and the pi and phi geometry. It's really, I've catalogued so many ancient sites, modern sites, Renaissance. It's continued through. To dismiss it as coincidence is no, you can't do it. If it is, that's a pathology of yours. It's denialism. Now, to say it's proven, that's a big call, but to just dismiss it as coincidence, no, that can't be done in any reasonable, logical way. This is measurable, testable. Unlike the stone circles, other places can be measured with superb accuracy, and they all say the same thing. Have a good. Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded, and I'll be adding this video to two playlists. The one on the long foot and harmony between various supposedly unconnected sets of ancient measures, and also to the list on 33, because especially as a measurement and how it would apply to the ancient through to the modern world. So the long foot will talk 1.056 feet, or the Persian foot, and there was some interesting recent. So grey weathers 108 to 105 feet. Getting exact measures, whether it's Stonehenge, these other stone circles, lots of problems in regards to that. However, Alexander Thom, John Hill, and others have surveyed these sites and found that there seems to be a basic set of measurements, also a geometry which converges, which brings these places together. So, how big is Stonehenge? Well, between 105 to 108 feet, depending on when the survey was done, who was doing it, and how they conducted the survey. Did they measure from the base of the stone, or did they include sections such as that? So that's one of the big problems with stone circles. However, this does not apply to all ancient sites. So the use of a standard measure, whether it was from Scotland down to southwest and southeast England, well, it wouldn't be that they follow the same patterns of archaeoastronomy, for instance, wouldn't be at all unusual. Actually be surprising that there isn't some sort of sacred measure, sacred number connected to these peoples. And so the issue of Stonehenge, exactly how big is it? The Folkestone drums was a recent find that links will be in the link to the Longfoot playlist, and there I've got some other links where you can go a little bit further. But the Folkestone drums is another piece of evidence in regards to not just surveying the sites themselves, but also as a prototype, as a tape measure, as a basis from where measuring ropes, measuring cords can be standardized. But also the evidence for it's not just in the structure, which can be argued, various movements, reconstructions, that type of stuff, but the lintels themselves are pointing towards this and backing this up. So is for instance, grey weathers showing 105.6 feet. That's, again, a little over 3 inches on either side. So do you measure from the outside, from the inside? They're slightly elliptical. So do you do the longest or the shortest, or do you get the average? But however, there is more to it. So 33 over 32 as well. That's it, because 33 times 32 is 105.6, the same set of digits. This would half of that is 528, is in 5,280 feet per mile. 32 rods, 528 feet. A measuring rod is 33 feet divided by 2. 33 pounds, 528 ounces. 32nd triangular number. and these other aspects. So also in that Longfoot, I talked about the Salamis stone again, where you have these ancient units of measure, including the allegedly modern English foot, or that scale in places such as the Parthenon, where we have nice, clean, lovely whole numbers. And if you look at the other breakdown unit, you get 144, etc. Just lovely stuff going on in there. And then we had the charts over. We have a standard international, or the English. I'll just call it. Shouldn't have called it SI anyway. The English foot 105.6. So what if Petrie's survey is the most accurate one? That would make it 105.6 feet, or 100 long feet, or 10 lintels in diameter. That now between the Doric, the Ionic, and the Samian, these ancient Greek units, or at least the Greeks were using them, I would say they probably inherited them based on older structures, the harmonies between the measurement systems, and also the beautiful numbers contained therein: 3, 4, 5, 6, 288, 144, 396. It's just all there. So 100 long feet. Where are we? 100 long feet is 105.6 feet. Also 33 Doric yards, or in the Ionic, 330 hands, 330, 33. The long foot harmonizing between, including the Babylonian and the so the Indus, or the Mohenjo-Daro foot, Harappa, is the same as the Royal Babylonian, is the same as the Saxon foot. But now, so 33 and the long foot, and the harmony between ancient measure systems. Well, so in Harappa or Mohenjo-Daro, because of the way the streets are built, the Mohenjo-Daro foot is pretty rock solid in that term. So one Mohenjo-Daro or Harappan, basically the Indus, 13.2 inches or 1.1 feet. Therefore, 33 feet being their standard would be 30 of their feet or units. Not exactly sure what it's called. Now, it's also worth noting that their foot is broken down into 10 units, not into 12. The long scale, how did they break down those units? Not really sure, at least in the ancient sense. The Persian ones, it's still 12 inches per foot, that type of stuff. But in regards to the Stonehenge or these other ancient sites, can't be sure, so just declaring that. However, in other places, a 12-inch 3 feet being a yard, etc., is pretty much a standard still to this day. Now, I think it's almost exactly a mile from Stonehenge was Blue Stonehenge, as it was called, and based on the available measures, again, when these stone circles, it's always going to be a problem, but at 33 feet in diameter. West Kennet Long Barrow, not so far away, 100 meters or 330 feet long. However, again, can't be sure on that. I would suspect it's actually 328, because then it's 4. Yes, so the width times 4 is the length. But that also depends, is the quoted width of it exactly 82 feet? Well, that's hard to tell because it's earthworks. How do you get you can't measure erosion, all these type of factors come in. But when you look at the entirety of them, and that we have similar units going on. So for instance, Sehenge, and not found a few years ago now, but Sehenge 2 or Home 2 were found on the southeast coast of England. Now what they've found was that Sehenge 1 or Home 1 and then Home 2, well, they found that there was like a marker, an upturned log, and like an upside down tree, which is very interesting. You also got this, or essentially, and you got a double trunk, and there in Sehenge 1 we have 2. But what was interesting is that they seem to be, and there are probably more to these that will be found, that form a circle around this central point, which is 100 meters and 100 meters and 100 meters. So 330 feet is 100.584 meters. So again, 330 feet. So West Kennet Long Barrow is pretty much the distance that separates these. Just another example of seemingly standard units at very important numbers. Now in Egypt as well, so we have, again, you need exact measures. So again, putting an asterisk over these, because it's impossible to be, you want to be super accurate, but for instance, there's a terrace around Cathedral pyramid of 10 meters or 33 feet. Cathedral is built on a 33 feet higher, on a it's the base of it is higher. There's like a plateau. It's 10 meters or 33 feet. The wall of the Crow, which leads off from the Great Pyramids there, quoted as 10 feet, so 33, 10.5 meters is 33 feet. Knowing the exact height of it, because it's, well, where's exactly the base, what's happened to the top, so again, hard to tell. The enclosing walls at Saqqara Pyramid are quoted again as 33 feet, because of, again, these factors. You want to be to within a millimeter or very, very close to quote it exactly. However, can't be sure with that one. And Abu Simbel, the smaller statues are 33 feet and the taller statues are 66 feet. Which brings us back to 105.6 feet as a probable, at least one of the diameters of Stonehenge, being a harmony between Doric, Ionic, Samian, Long, Indus, Babylonian and Saxon at beautiful numbers as well. So now this is the spreadsheet of 33. So okay, also worth noting, so Indus was broken down into units of 10. The Royal Babylonian scale, there were 30 fingers and 180 grains per unit, unlike the system, the British, let's call it a British system. But even then, they come lovely together. So 33 feet on, again, fingers being the harmony point rather than inches or feet where all these units come together. Well, at 33 feet, we miss out on Samian, but there's something going on with Samian, and I meant in regards to 29.53 and again, ancient sites, the moon, the synodic month, but what we have is 528 English fingers, 495 Doric, digits or digitus is another word for finger, 550 Ionic, 500 Long or Persian, 600 Babylonian Royal, or 480 Saxon. Now all these subdivisions, with the exception of fingers and Longfoot, is known, but on the basis of this, so the Persians were using very similar, if not exactly the same, divisions of feet, inches, etc. as the Greeks, and there we see those going on there. So from the ancient world through to the modern world, 33. So for instance, House of a Temple, headquarters 33rd degree masonry, Scottish Rite, 33 columns, 33 feet each. Scottish Rite Cathedral in Indianapolis, Tyler's Room, a cube of 33 feet each side. The ballroom, 99 by 99 feet to the outside, or 33 by 33 yards, with a dance area of 66 by 66 feet. The stage in there is 33 feet deep. The arena, 33 foot square again. So the connections between 33 and 528 is also worth bringing back up, because Lincoln Memorial in Washington, which is, again, every memorial, major public building in Washington is done along these same harmonic, beautiful numbers. So there are there are the Doric columns, 44 feet high, that's 528 inches, so 33 feet is 528 fingers, 44 feet, 528 inches. Now there are 36 of those columns times 44, so 528 yards is the total of these measures. Now let me pause a moment. Okay, so 330 or 33 feet is going to be either 5,280 or 528. Again, the same system, the numbers, beautiful connections between ancient architecture and to the modern era as well. So again, 33 pounds, 528 ounces, 32 rods, 528 feet. That 32 to 33 thing, 33 times 32 is 1056, just like the Longfoot, 1 mile, 5,280 feet, and 32nd triangular number. But what's going on here? Well, I mentioned just in the recent episode, okay, I didn't include that. Each arch is 1650 feet, so both arches together on the Sydney Harbour Bridge is 3,300 feet. It's 440 feet high in total, which is 5,280 inches. Now that could be, oh well, just 444 feet, 440. Well, okay, well, and here's the thing. The amount of steel is 52,800 tons of steel. Mohenjo quadrilateral, 33 feet by 121 feet. Chartres Cathedral, 121 feet nave. That's also in Bourges Cathedral, pardon the pronunciation. St. Paul's Cathedral, 528 steps to the top. The nave, 121 feet, which brings us back to 121 feet being 330 Saxon hands. So the Mohenjo quadrilateral, 330 Saxon hands long. It all fits together from the ancient to the modern, especially through the esoteric world and the stonemasons. Have a good one.